You are now listening to Testimonies with Terry.
All right, guys, I am here with an amazing couple, Cody and Courtney Ferreira. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, this is pretty cool because I've never really met you guys or talked to you guys in depth before today. You know, we go to the same church, and Courtney, you and I got to chat a little bit, as far as setting this appointment up. But man, this is just God's timing. Courtney, you shared with me a little bit yesterday, kind of what God was putting on your heart. So tell us kind of your side of the story here of what God's been doing.
Well, I guess when you started like season 1, it was kind of interesting because I did listen to all of your seasons so far. And season 1, I was like, gosh, I feel like I need to reach out to Terry because a lot of these are very, a lot of the stories and testimonies were kind of hitting home too. And I just felt like I needed to share. However, I was not being obedient and I kind of just kept listening and I did not reach out to Terry. And then when you added me on Facebook, I'm like, okay, like this is the time. I know exactly what he's going to ask and I need to be obedient now.
Yeah, and man, it's crazy too because I think during season 2, I had gotten the opportunity to kind of plug the podcast at church, and you had came up to me afterwards and just said, "Hey, I'm a fan, and I've been listening to your show." And Cheryl Curran, our pastor's wife, was standing next to me, and as you were walking away, she just was like, "Her and her husband, they need to come on your show at some point. They have a story." And she didn't say anything else. She just said that. And then I was meeting up with Ben Weirs, who was a guest on season 2, and for breakfast. And he said that he was meeting up with you, Cody. And as soon as he said your name, like it just kind of triggered me back to like, whoa, that name, like I got to reach out to them and see if they want to be on the podcast. And so I just see this as God's perfect timing. And man, I'm just super pumped to get to know you guys more and just get your story out.
Absolutely.
So then let's kind of do it this way. Courtney, we'll start with your testimony, your life story. So where did you grow up, Courtney? What was family life like for you?
Well, I grew up in St. Joe, basically, and I still live in St. Joe, so have not moved very far from home. I remember as a kid, I told my mom, I'm like, when I grow up, I'm going to move someplace warm. And she's like, well, where's that going to be? And I remember saying North Dakota. And yeah, they laughed at me. And now I am the only kid that lives in Minnesota between my brother and sister. So, well, I shouldn't say that. Closest to my mom and dad, I guess. Yeah, my brother moved away. But so yeah, living in St. Joe, that's where I grew up and that's where we're still living. I guess as far as family life, I have a brother who is 5 years older than me and a sister who is 3 years older than me. And I guess, I don't know, when you ask about family life, we have a huge family on my mom's side. My dad's side is pretty big as well, but my mom's side, gosh, I think my aunt told me recently, we have like, I think it's like 45 first cousins, and I think we've exceeded that with like our children, so it's like over 50 some, and I think we now have like 2 great, like, however you want to say it, grandkids, but like,
wow,
yeah, like the 3rd generation or whatever you want to call it. So it's a very big family. Growing up, we were all like super, super close because we all lived like right in central Minnesota. So I feel like a lot of our like summers, a lot of our growing up was with cousins, like whether it was holidays, Easter, whatever it was, like we were always with like our cousins, spending time. We have horses. So growing up, our summers were filled with like horse stuff. My mom, my sister and I, we all rode horse and did barrel racing and stuff like that. So that was a lot of our like growing up, is just family, horses, and yeah, that was kind of it. So I think of that like as early on, maybe like into like maybe like elementary school years. A lot of family. Summertime, again, we did 4-H, so that was another like big family thing too, where like my aunts and uncles, we would show their cows and pigs and things like that. Yeah, so again, just back to family. We were all super close. We all got along really well. I can't really think of anything in my upbringing that was like negative. Everyone was just really easygoing.
That's awesome. And are you still into horses to this day? Like, do you have horses still?
I sort of do. I have a pony, and I have my sister's horse at my house right now who is pregnant and going to have a baby in a couple months. And that baby is my future barrel racing horse in probably
Cool.
like 5 or 8 years. Who knows? So yeah, it's not born yet, but that'll be my next horse. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So very good childhood from what it sounds like. Very close with family. How about when it comes to like friends? What were friends like for you? What was it just natural making friendships? Were there any struggles with that?
I feel like a lot of the friends were my relatives for the most part as I was like really young. But then I guess like, making friends wasn't super hard. I feel like I'm usually a pretty outgoing person and can kind of talk to anybody. But yeah, into like elementary school, middle school, I didn't really have any issues, I guess, finding friends or making friends. So yeah, that was never really a struggle.
Praise God. Those middle school years can be kind of rough, with a lot of the changes, and especially with women, a lot of the mean girl stuff kind of starts to come out during those ages. So I'm glad that you didn't have to deal with that. What was school like for you? Were you pretty good in school, Courtney, across the board, or what kind of student were you?
I was a good student. I got really good grades, and I mean, I'd never struggled with like learning anything. I feel like that all went really well. When you say like friends and stuff, I mean, it was easy for me to make friends, but I think that middle school year was kind of not a great time. Not necessarily like for like in regards to like making friends, keeping friends. We probably had a lot of cliques and things like that. I am still, I wouldn't say like super close, but I do still connect with some of my middle school and high school friends as well. But middle school might have been like the time where my parents probably, I might have made my dad's hair fall out, and maybe my mom had some gray hairs because that was kind of the time of life where I was not a very good daughter. We'll just say that.
Behave.
I didn't
Behavior.
behave the best. Yeah, my friends, we got into some trouble, making like some bad choices. Gosh, maybe like around like 13, 14, 15, maybe through, I think I got my act together maybe at 17. But those years in between, yeah, I started like drinking alcohol, going to parties, lying to my parents, all of that stuff that I'm not super proud about, but it's a part of my past.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, fairly common for teenagers, right? We kind of start to get into that rebellious stage and fight authority and go against what maybe we were taught growing up. And so I guess I'm curious, Courtney, like growing up, did you grow up in the church or grow up with any faith?
We grew up Catholic. I mean, we went to church on Sundays. Most Sundays in the summer we didn't. Most if it was like Easter or Christmas, we would go. But it was something that like we had to do. Like it wasn't like something that it wasn't something that I wanted to do. My parents would wake us up and, okay, it's time to go to church. And we would go to church. I think I remember more like making hand puppets like in the pew in front of me more so than like understanding or like realizing what was actually like being talked about. we did go to like religion class on Sundays, like after, I think it was like after service or something, but, and went through the whole like first communion, confirmation. I think that's it. Like those two
Yep.
things. So, I mean, we went through the motions, but it wasn't like, I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know God. It was just kind of a motion, like just kind of going through the motions.
Yeah. And so when you were going through that partying phase throughout your teenage years, did you have any inner sense of like, this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this? Or did that rebellious spirit kind of just take over and just be like, screw it, we'll just kind of do whatever?
Mostly that. Interesting though, like I did have a friend who went to River of Life, the youth group. And so there were maybe like a handful of times where I went with her. I did go to like the youth convention, I think twice. And I loved it. And it wasn't that like my parents were against like me going, but they just didn't know the church. And I mean, we didn't live like super close. It was like a half an hour maybe. So they weren't, I mean, they weren't going to like drive me across town. So if I wanted to go, it was like with a friend after school or something. And then I don't even know, they might have picked me up afterwards or something. But I mean, I do remember going to the youth group, and yeah, being involved for maybe a handful of times, kind of during those rebellious years. And I remember kind of feeling that like right and wrong piece, but I don't think I cared. I just kept going. Yeah.
What was that like going to the youth group? Because I have a similar background, Courtney, where I grew up Catholic. And then actually when I was in college, I started going to River of Life and helping out at the youth group there. And to me, at first, I was kind of weirded out because like I'm used to like the quiet church. No one's making a peep. No one's raising their hands for sure. And then you go to like a youth group and it's loud music and people are pumped to be there and people are like happy to be at church, which I wasn't used to. And it was like a whole new world to me. And I kind of felt like a fish out of water at first. What was that like for you? I know you said you only went there a few times, but what were you feeling when you went there?
You're definitely right. I mean, I think we all know going from Catholic to like an Assemblies of God church, like I didn't really know what to expect. But yeah, the first few times it was kind of like a little overwhelming because, yeah, I didn't really know what people were doing. You know, my friend would like put her hands up and like during worship and stuff, but like I didn't really know what that was. Definitely, like you said, fish out of water, like what's happening. But I think at that stage of life, like I don't think I really cared. Like I just kind of went with it. It wasn't like, I don't know, maybe like into adulthood where it's almost like just more so awkward, like transitioning into that. And you're like, okay, what's going on here? Like what's happening? Whereas a kid, like all the other kids were worshiping like they normally do. And I was the one who was like not going along with the flow, you know, maybe not as comfortable as everyone else. But, so I mean, it was fine. I accepted it. You know, it wasn't, I don't know, I guess it was a shock at first, but I think of like going to the youth convention, which was kind of tenfold.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've been there or heard about it, but I think I went twice. And you have this huge like civic center, you know, filled with all these kids. And I remember experiencing somebody, like a friend of mine, talking in tongues at that point. And I'm like, that kind of shocked me. Cause I'm like, there's no way somebody can like just make that up or like just sound like that.
Right.
But I didn't know what it was. And I think at that point I was kind of scared to ask. So I never really knew, but that just kind of stuck with me. It didn't scare me to the point where I'm like, I'm not going back there. Like, this is crazy. But I just didn't know what to do with that or what that meant.
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like seeds were kind of being planted when you would go to youth convention or youth group. You mentioned at 17 years old, kind of when you got your act together. What happened at that age that made you realize that, man, I got to start going down a different path here?
Gosh, I don't know if I can really like pinpoint like the exact like moment. I know my sister, she her junior and senior year, she went post-secondary. And at the time, like, so she was 3 years older than me. And I remember at that time, I'm like, gosh, I'm never going to do that because, like, she lost all of her friends or, like, didn't, connect with them. She's not involved in school anymore. She's going to college. And I'm like, I'm never going to do that and, like, leave my friends. But yeah, on was it my senior year? I don't know what made me want to go post-secondary, but I did. I did have a couple friends that also did. Yeah, but like I said, I don't know like what the actual turning point was, if I just kind of was at this age where, I mean, I think my friends were still kind of partying and getting into bad things, but I don't know. I just kind of pulled away and yeah, did my post-secondary thing on my senior year. I did I think I went to St. Cloud State first for like a semester. And then I switched to the tech college after that. And yeah, from then on, I did kind of pull away from the friends that I was hanging out with, and got close with one of the other friends that went post-secondary with me. And we did pretty much all the same classes. So I don't know, I kind of shifted a little bit my senior year for whatever reason. I don't 100% know. It was a good thing.
It sounds like the thing that you feared with your sister losing her friends happened to you, but it wasn't a bad thing. It was actually a good thing. And so you graduate high school. Did you have any idea of what you wanted to do after high school, Courtney?
I did not exactly. I mean, I did all of my, what's it called? General classes. I got all those like kind of out of the way. And actually I was wanting to go into dental hygiene. I don't really know exactly why, but that was just like, hey, it's a good job. And I just started taking all the prereqs for that. But I didn't really know exactly like what I wanted to do until like maybe a couple years. Well, maybe like after that senior year of post-secondary classes. I do want to back up for one sec. So like there's one like significant thing that was in high school, which I guess looking back, it could have been partly a trigger, but gosh, sorry if I get emotional.
You're fine.
So in like when I was in 9th grade, it was the time where the Rocori school shooting happened.
You were part of that.
Yeah. So I was a freshman when that happened. And it was actually like in the class when that happened.
Wow.
So there were, let's see, so I won't go into like maybe a ton of it, but at Rocori in the basement, there's like, it's basically like a big square. On one side, there's like the girls' like varsity locker room, and on the opposite end is like the swimming locker room. So when we were in Phi Ed for that class, most of the girls got ready in the swimming locker room, and then there was 3 of us that got ready in the varsity locker room because we were in other sports, so we just were always over there. And we didn't hear anything. But as we were coming out to go upstairs to the gym, we saw our teacher along with one of the students on the floor. And at that point, he had already like gotten hit with the ricocheted bullet. At the time, like, we had no clue what had happened. Like, if I'm being honest, I thought he slipped and fell and like hit his head. But the teacher basically was like, go into the swing locker room, hold the door shut, don't let anybody in unless it's a police officer. So the 3 of us like ran to the swim locker room and were freaking out because we had no clue, but we were scared. basically none of the other girls knew anything. So we just kind of told them what we saw and what we were told to do. So yeah, I mean, we held the lock or like the door shut. I don't even know how much time passed, but I mean, there was a knock at the door and the police officer put his badge like under the door so we could see. And we were basically escorted out into, I think it was like an art room or something upstairs. We still didn't know like what happened, but we knew it was something not good. And basically we were kind of held at the school until they could like interview us, and everyone was kept separate. But yeah, it was confusing. Like, we had no clue like what was going on.
Man, and anyone who grew up in the Cold Spring area is familiar with the Rocori shooting. Courtney, for those that aren't familiar, what were kind of the, I guess, end results of that? Like, how many casualties? Do you know, what the motive of the shooter was? Like, kind of those details. Could you kind of fill us in a little bit on that?
Yeah, so there was two guys. One of them was in my grade. The other one was a senior, so a freshman and a senior. The boy that we saw was a senior. From everything that happened, it sounded like the senior was just kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time. The other boy, the shooter that was in my grade, I had class with him just before that class too. Like, so we had two classes together. He sat right in front of me.
Oh, wow.
Had no idea, that anything like this would ever happen. But yeah, so basically the one boy who was in my grade, I don't know his motive exactly. I know he was going after the other boy that was in my grade that had died. But it sounded like they came out of the locker room. One of the bullets ricocheted off the wall and happened to hit the senior, and he died. And then he continued to follow the other boy in my grade up the stairs to the gym. And once he got to the gym, he shot him and he died. I think he was hospitalized for some time, but then passed away. But basically, the other gym teacher was already upstairs. And basically, I think he like yelled stop, and he dropped the gun, brought him to, I don't even know, the counselor's office or something. But yeah, at that point, again, nobody really knew what was happening unless you actually saw like the event happen. But even though we were downstairs, I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear any gunshots. I mean, the walls down there are all like concrete. But yeah, and as far as I know, the shooter is still in prison, I believe. I can't remember exactly how everything happened after that, but yeah, I think he's still in prison.
Wow.
Yeah, all of us. I mean, after I think they evacuated most people and they kind of figured out what had happened, they moved us, from one room into like the library, where we had to be interviewed before we could leave. But they made sure to keep like every group of students separate so we couldn't like talk to other people and like share stories or make things up or, whatever it might be. So after that, I think we were able to call our parents after we got interviewed. And then we were walked over from the high school to the elementary school where our parents could come pick us up after that.
Wow. I can't imagine what that whole process was like for you, Courtney. I mean, I'm sure, just survival instincts and adrenaline kind of take over during those moments. And like you said, you had to be interviewed, and I'm sure that was a lengthy process before you were able to call your parents and go home. Can you recall, like, at what point did it finally sink in that, whoa, like I just was in a situation of a school shooting.
Yeah. I don't think it was like, we still didn't know, like when we got interviewed, we still didn't know like what happened. Like we got picked up by our parents, and I think it was maybe at that point where they told us what had happened, because everyone was so separated. So we didn't actually know. But I do remember my mom picked me up, and my sister, who I said was post-secondary, she was at college, and that was like one of her classmates that had died. So we met up with my sister, and I remember just like, I think at that point, just kind of it all sinking in. But gosh, I feel like sometimes it was kind of a blur. Like there's some things, like I don't remember actually getting interviewed, but I remember like some things are very clear and some things are just like no recollection, like blacked out, like no clue what happened during certain periods of time.
Yeah. Yeah. How did that affect you short term, in the days, the weeks, the months that followed, but also long term? Do you see yourself having any like trauma symptoms because of that event, as far as hypervigilance, flashbacks, safety concerns, anything like that?
I don't know that there's any like conscious things, like maybe subconscious, like I don't know. Like I mean, I think about it, and I know like all of the students that like experienced this and went through this, I feel like kind of move through in like that time of year when it's like the anniversary of that happening. I think you just kind of feel that stronger connection, or just kind of, I don't know, like just, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that there's been any like long term, except for going back to that. It just brings up, emotions, obviously. But as far as like actual trauma, I don't think so. Because I didn't really know what happened. I just had what I saw, and that was it. So yeah, I don't think there's been any actual like trauma from it. It's just emotions that bubble up when you might talk about it or think about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. What did school look like after that? Did they call school off for the rest of that week, or like when you did go back, did they have any messages or preventative measures put in place? What was that like?
Gosh, again, I feel like that might have been like one of the spots that I kind of like black out. I know that we didn't have school, I think at least for a couple of days, but gosh, I don't remember if it was like a week or what that was, but I feel like there was like higher security of some kind. Like maybe there were some of the I don't know if they were like officers or just like presence in the school, just kind of walking around to help the kids like feel safer. I remember some kids probably took way more time off. I think a couple of classmates maybe switched schools. It was a little different atmosphere, of course. Like you get back and it's scary. You'd have never thought something like this in such a small community could happen. Yeah.
Is
So
there
I guess
anything?
after that, I just don't recall a whole lot.
Yeah, is there anything that stands out to you? There may be someone listening to this who they've also been through a school shooting. For you, Courtney, was there anything that just seemed to help as far as maybe feeling comfortable going back to school? Was it just nice to just be around your friends and classmates again, or teachers? Like, what helped you get through that?
I think it was just kind of getting close with friends, meeting them there. I don't think I was driving at the time, so I think it was just meeting friends at school, and like you just kind of talk about it, maybe not talk about it, or maybe, I don't know, maybe that was a part of life too, where I kind of slipped into that not so great time and not so great choices too. I don't know that had a direct relation to my choices, but most likely probably played a part in that too.
Yeah, the therapist in me really wants to like dive into that right now and see if there's any connections, but that's not why we're here. I'm off the clock, so we'll leave it at that. But man, I'm just super thankful that God's hand of protection was over you in that moment, and I'm obviously deeply saddened that there was people that lost their lives over that as well. And man, like you said, it's just, Cold Spring isn't a very big community, but no community is really off limits when it comes to school shootings, unfortunately, and we're seeing that even today. I mean, it's just demonic, is really what it is. And so I'm just thankful that you're still here and your story is still being written. And so let's kind of pick back up then. College, you said you weren't really sure what you wanted to do. You were kind of doing some prereqs for dental hygienist. Where does that path kind of take you?
So yeah, a friend and I, again, we went post-secondary together. We, after college, we actually moved in together. Found out later on we lived in the same apartment building as Cody, just like there's two buildings. Yeah, two buildings, but at the same time we both lived there, which was kind of crazy because we didn't know each other. But
yeah.
So anyways, I lived with that friend, and yeah, we went to class together. We did all of our dental hygiene classes together. I shouldn't even say dental hygiene. We did all of our prereqs together for dental hygiene. And not long after, I don't know what hit me, but I'm like, I don't know if I want to work in like a small little office forever. I want to have like variety. So thankfully it kind of switched pretty easily into nursing, which is what field I did go into. So all of the prereqs transferred like perfectly, and it was a smooth transition into like all of the like undergrad nursing prereqs. I applied. I wanted to save money, which I think in the long run, I probably spent as much as people who went and just did their 4-year degree right away, but it's okay. I went and lived with my sister up in Fergus Falls. I got into their tech college there, so I did my LPN. Lived with her during that time. After my LPN, I moved back in with my parents and did my 2-year RN. It was the first program through the tech college in St. Cloud. So I did my 2-year ADN program. At that point, I did work as a nurse. I did some pediatric nursing. I was in a home with a little boy, little kids. It was great. I love being in the home. But while I was there on my overnight shift, I was able to finish my bachelor's degree through St. Scholastica. So I do have my 4-year RN degree now. So yeah, that was kind of like the nursing piece of it, I guess.
Man, that's so cool that you found something that you were passionate about, Courtney. And it sounds like during this time you also found your now husband, Cody. So Cody, let's shift the mic over to you here and get your story. So kind of same questions for you, man. Where did you grow up and what was family life like for you?
Well, as I'm sitting here, like kind of processing some stuff that what I'm about to talk about, I never really stopped to think about my life and how it all worked out, but I didn't think it was that crazy until I'm starting to go through it in my head. But I was born in Missouri and went through kindergarten down there, and my dad always wanted to move to Alaska, but my mom would never allow him to move. And so they settled on Minnesota, which is mini Alaska. And so we moved up to Walker, Minnesota, and I went from first grade through 7th grade there. And I'm not sure why, but we decided to move again. We moved to Monaga. I think my mom got a job offer in that area in Park Rapids or something like that. And we ended up moving again, and that was kind of tough, moving from all my friends at 7th grade, but made new friends and graduated at Monaga High School. And like today, I don't really keep in close contact with many of them. There's about 2 or 3 of them that I really stay in touch with, and that's about it. So, but I worked at a restaurant probably from the age of 15. I got a dishwashing job, and then I moved up into the kitchen and progressed my way to the executive chef position for 3 years. And it was just overwhelming for me to watch all my friends and everybody go and hang out on the weekends. And and I was stuck in a kitchen, hot and sweaty, and and nights, weekends, and holidays, I was tied away there. But it got me to be a little bit more disciplined, I guess. So on working for what I wanted to have in life, I guess. So
Let's stop there, Cody, because I want to unpack a few things. First of all, you moved quite a bit. What was that like for you? I mean, that can be pretty difficult, especially, when you're in your middle school years, teenage years. What was that like, having to move a couple of different times?
For me personally, it was really hard. It really was. It was at each stage of moving. It was we stayed for years and then moved again, and then so you almost get roots planted and then rip them out and move somewhere else. So I mean, it was tough. I mean, remember growing up as a kid, that making new friends. It was always fun to make new friends, but when we landed in Monaga, I never felt like that was home for me. Like that was just passing time again. So. But I did graduate there, and I stuck around 3 more years working as the executive chef, and then moved away and moved down to St. Cloud.
Oftentimes when I'm working with clients and they've had to move a lot, sometimes they can harbor some anger, maybe bitterness or resentment towards their parents that, man, like you're the reason I, had to leave my friends and everything. Did you experience any of that, or were you more so understanding of the situation that, it is what it is, just got to deal with it?
Well, you're asking me now. If you asked me that back then, it would have been a different answer. But no, I resented, I had a lot of resentment for my parents. I don't know that it was necessarily that cause, though. So there's more to my history of growing up as a kid. So my father was an alcoholic and abusive to all of us. And every night needing to witness him passed out at the table or whatever, just drunk, was really tough too. And then you always walked on eggshells around him too, because we didn't know, you didn't want to be the next target for him. So, I don't know. That was probably the hardest part of it. And, my mom always had, like, we grew up in faith too. Like, I grew up Catholic as well, and baptized and, confirmed Catholic. But we never practiced our faith. I think I was going to church through school hours. So it was church school. I don't know if you remember having that, but back in the day, we had that offered to us, and that was my time for church. But it was, at that time, it was never a connection to God. It was just me getting out of school, and we get to go and hang out with our friends. So going through the steps like that, I never had a true connection to God. Growing up a little bit older, my mom would push. She was very aggressive with trying to keep God in our lives, and it built a wall between me and God, and that I resented him as well, because I didn't want anything to do with it. I was, I wasn't ready for that change in my life. And I grew up drinking and smoking and doing the typical teenager stuff, and without God in your life, that's where the path you tend to fall down. And looking at it at that age, at that time, in that mindset, it was never an issue for me. It was a fun time, and go and have a great party, and wake up hungover and do it again the next night. And I don't know, I'm definitely not proud of those stages of my life. Looking back at it, it could have been different, but I chose that because I thought that was the enjoyment that I needed in my life at that point. So
also kind of the example your dad had set, with his drinking.
Yeah.
Did your parents, are they still together, or did the alcoholism cause any separation or divorce?
So my dad has passed away, and my mom now lives down in Texas. But oddly enough, I don't know how this ever happened, but oddly enough, through all of this experience, we still kept a tremendous amount of love for my dad and my mom. And as he got older, I remember I was about 15 years old when he cold turkey stopped drinking. It was just done, over with. And he kept 3 beers in the refrigerator on the bottom shelf in the way back of the refrigerator as a reminder for him. They stayed there for many years that I can remember, and long after I grew up and moved out of the house, they were still there. And it was a tough transition for me. Like I saw my dad blackout drunk and abusive my entire life, and then all of a sudden overnight it was just cold turkey stopped. And that's when he started preaching faith and tried to get, God back into my life and all of our, all my siblings' lives and stuff. And I think we resented it so much that we didn't want to hear it. I know I did. Seeing my dad transition like that was oddly enough, like, tough for me to go through that experience. And I'm like, I don't even know who you are anymore. And
Yeah,
I didn't want nothing to do with him. And I remember the day I moved out, I never told him that I was moving out. I showed up with a trailer, backed it up to the door, and me and my buddy are starting to move my stuff out. And he comes out and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm moving out." He's like, "You were moving out? When are you going to talk to me about this?" And we argued over an insurance money that I owed him for my insurance for my car. And I ended up writing him out a check. I crinkled it up and I threw it at him. I'm like, "Here you go." And so just that rebellious teenager going through these, these changes in my life too. And I don't know. I forgave him for everything he's done to us and what he brought us through. And I think that's where we still kept so much love for all of us kids. We were so close with him, regardless of what he did and what his actions were towards us. And when he got a little bit older, I had moved on down to St. Cloud, and I'm skipping over quite a bit to get to this point, but we had already been together and at our house, and my dad started experiencing heart attacks. And at this point in time, he was living in Monaga, He was living in Monaga still, and it's kind of in a desolate area. So if, medical emergency would have taken him 40 minutes plus to get to him. And I opened up our door to have them come down and live with us, and they moved in with us at where we were at. And it was 2 years that they were with us. And my dad I think he was starting to get like frustrated with living in our basement still and kind of under our roof, and he wanted to go and get something and on his own. And they bought a cabin up in Moose Lake, and nobody knew anything about it. They just found this cabin and bought it. And my dad was in and out of the hospital at the time, and he ended up signing the closing documents in the hospital. And so when we found out that they bought this place, they moved up there, and we were all kind of in shock. It was 11 days later that he passed away.
wow.
And so 9 days into their new house, he fell and couldn't get up, and they had to call the ambulance in to come get him, and they rushed him into Moose Lake Hospital. And then that's where we were informed about him being in the hospital again. At this point in time, it wasn't really anything new. It was kind of Dad's in the hospital again, so
Yeah.
didn't think anything of it. But he had developed pneumonia, and with his body being so weak, it was really pneumonia that ended up taking his life for him. So we were luckily enough able to make it to the hospital and be on bedside with him while he passed away, and we got our last moments with him. So but yeah, like I said, awkwardly enough, like experiencing those experiences with my dad and the way he treated us, like we all still kept a tremendous amount of love for him, and our hearts were always open for him. And looking at it, like, I don't know why at this point in time, we still never really had God in our life. And it was, I don't know, just pretty impressive though, that we were able to still have that amount of love for him.
Right, right, because that's obviously not the case for everybody in that situation. You know that
No.
it's easy for that bitterness and that anger and that resentment to just build and stay throughout the years. But you, for no reason other than just God intervening in your life before you even really knew God, were able to keep that love. I mean, your whole family were able to keep that love, and so. Man, I just see what a gift God gave you too, just with those last moments with your dad, you know, to especially in like a remote area like that, like you were able to get there and spend that time. What's that been like now, Cody? Obviously, and we'll go back into the story, but you guys have
Yeah.
kids now, raising kids without, you know, that grandpa in their life and just you not having dad in your life. How have you been navigating through that?
Well, so growing up, we never had family close by us. It was always our immediate family, and that was it. Grandmas, grandpas, cousins, aunts, uncles, they all lived elsewhere, and we never ever saw them. I remember one family reunion that we went to out in California, but I must have been like 9 years old at that time. And so that was the only time that I've ever really gotten to meet my extended family. So we were always just our immediate family wherever we went. And so I don't know, kind of growing up, I always promised to myself that I wanted to keep my family close to grandmas and grandpas and cousins and relatives. And so that's always been my dream, is being close with them all. And my mom has moved off to Texas, so she hasn't been close either. So we're really around your family mostly. So my siblings, they've all moved away. I got one up in Bemidji. I got two down in the cities area, and we see each other frequently, but not often. So
Yeah. Yeah. So your maybe dream of keeping the family close hasn't necessarily worked out how you want to, but yet God has also blessed you with Courtney's family being so
Yeah.
close, and
Oh, yeah.
your kids being able to have their grandparents around for that, which is an amazing gift. Going back a little bit with your dad here, Cody, do you know what was that moment that just made him want to just stop cold turkey?
Yep. He was he had taken a drive with my sister and I in our vehicle, and he was very intoxicated, and when my mom came home and found out about that, she gave him an ultimatum basically and said that I'm gone with the kids or you're going to make some changes. And so I think that was what his reasoning was for, and it was, like I said, it was just a cold turkey change overnight.
Yeah. Wow. Well, man, glad that your mom was able to be, you know, firm and just taking that stance and just, dude, you either got to make that change or we're gone. And I'm glad that he made that change. You mentioned then kind of going on and working into a restaurant and becoming, you know, one of their top cooks there. Had you been, you know, cooking before that? Was that something that you enjoyed, or was this just a skill and a trade that you just picked up on the job?
Well, like I said, I had worked at the same place, and I kind of, for 7.5 years, I was there, and I worked my way up, and it was always a fun environment. I enjoyed it. The people we were, you know, working with, and I always looked at the head chef as like the opportunity to come up with whatever you wanted to do. You know, that was your menu, and it always intrigued me. So when I had the opportunity come across my plate,
Yeah, good
I
pun.
took advantage of that, and I had to interview for it still, and my boss thought that I was a good fit. I had already been there. I know the routine. I know everything, you know, what we had to do, and yeah. And I took over, and it was a very good success for 3.5 years or 3 years, and then I decided to go back to school, and I had to make that change. So
And is that what brought you to St. Cloud with school?
yeah, yep.
So what did you go to school for?
Business and sales. So I went at the St. Cloud Community Technical College.
Yep.
And
And that's where
that
you
was
and Courtney met?
Sort of.
Around that time.
Yeah. So
Guess we can jump into that if you want.
So I had moved down here. I went through the sales program at the tech college, and I was pulled aside by one of the instructors to want to interview, you know, asked if I wanted to interview with a couple companies in town. And I said, yeah, you know, that was a cool opportunity that not everybody had. So I interviewed with 3 different companies local in St. Cloud and ended up with one of them, which was MCI Carpet One, and I ended up, like I said, accepting the job, and I don't know, a few years I was kind of more of an intern, really. I kind of felt like an internship, really. But then I was in my 4th year with that company, and I landed a pretty big job down in the metro area. And one of their requirements is that you had to be on site every day. And so I decided to move down there, and I was staying in a hotel, or I stayed in a hotel the first month, and then ended up transitioning into an apartment. This project ran for nearly a year, and it was all overnight stuff, so it was third shift hours. And at this time, I was approached by one of my friends, our mutual friend, and she had asked if she could get some carpet for her house, and she was hoping for a discount or whatever. And I'm like, well, you set me up with one of your single friends, and yeah, I'll get you some flooring. It turned out I never ended up getting her any flooring, but she ended up setting us up on a blind date.
That's a good deal for you.
Yeah, it worked out really good. So kind of cheesy way, but we met, and I just remember like that first moment of getting to meet her. We walked into a restaurant that I was rather familiar with, and everybody there, that they knew me, and there was all my friends.
Everybody there he knew. The whole place.
It was all set up.
I was set up.
But yeah, we sat down, and I remember we talked for like 4 hours, and after we were done, we went our different ways. I made a phone call to our mutual friend right away, and I'm like, what did you just do? This girl's amazing. And I don't know. So it was pretty cool, though. We had that moment.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And prior to that blind date there, had either of you guys been in any pretty committed relationships before?
I had been, and they only lasted like 2 years, and then it was some reason or another that we split up. And I had 3 of them that lasted about 2 years prior to Courtney. So,
okay. How about you, Courtney?
I was kind of similar. Yeah, I guess it started like in 9th grade. I had like a 2-year boyfriend, and then after that, it was like another 2-year boyfriend. So like every 2 years, I had, been with somebody for about that long. But
we passed our 2 years.
Milestone.
I guess my choices in guys was maybe not aligning. They're none of them were very similar to Cody. Yeah. So yeah, I guess every 2 years, this mutual friend, it was funny because I had just broken up with a boyfriend that I actually worked with too. And so we worked at Buffalo Wild Wings, and that was kind of my job like throughout school, which was great. Had a good group of people. We loved working. But yeah, so this one friend, I was on the other end of that and basically saying, okay, I'm done, like, just finding, like, a willy-nilly, like, person. Like, I have requirements. And I remember, like, I remember listing off, I don't even remember what they all were, but I knew that one of them was, like, he has to be handy, like, be able to, like, build things. He needs to have a truck. And I don't even remember what the other ones were, but those were, like, the 2 things. So, yeah, the friend told us about each other, and I know we talked on the phone a few times. Before then, when he was still living down towards the cities. And yeah, it was this blind date thing. And he's like, where should we go to eat? And like I said, he picked the place, and walk in, and like everyone's like, hey, Cody, like, how's it going? And I'm like, no way. Did you pick a place where you knew everybody? But yeah, it was kind of interesting because we sat in like the hottest place. It was like, I swear, a 90-degree day. But we sat outside and just like sweating. And I mean, we sat there it was truly like 4 hours and kind of closed down the place. And by the end of our conversation, I think we knew most things about each other. Like, yeah, family, friends, hobbies, like everything, hopes, dreams, like all those kind of things. I feel like we kind of laid it all out, and we're like, okay, here it is. Like, this is me. And if you don't like that, then maybe it's not meant to be. But
For me, you kind of swept me off my feet. I wasn't expecting it, really. It was more of like a love at first sight, and I've never experienced that before. So, but yeah, everything that I got to meet about you and understand, it was lining up with what I always wanted in a future soulmate. So,
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well,
Yeah.
shout out to the mutual friend for setting
Right.
you guys up, because here we are, how many years later, talking about it. So you guys start dating. How long did you guys date until, Cody, you popped the question?
oh, great.
That's another funny
I
thing.
should write these things down.
I feel like it was probably a couple of years because I think we lived together in an apartment for a couple of years. And then we moved in with my parents for a year while we were looking for a house. Then we bought a house together. I think it was a couple of years probably that we were dating. And I always give him grief about it, but I just got done working like a long overnight shift. And when I got done working, we closed on our house in St. Joe, our first house. We moved everything that day. So I was, again, running on zero sleep. And then I think it was that night that he asked me. And so I'm like, I was like half sleeping. So really, I said I was just vulnerable and said yes because I was like just wanting to go to bed, which is joking, but
Right. Right. Oh man, that's awesome. So yeah, so a couple years dating, you guys did a lot of life together in that time, as far as, Cody, you're in your career, Courtney, you're in your career. You guys buy a house, kind of start to settle down, pop the question, get married. What was the wedding like? Courtney, growing up as a little girl, I'm sure you had dreams of, I want my wedding to be this. Was it everything that you wanted?
it actually was. We chose to do an outdoor wedding, again, to try to save money, but I think we ended up spending probably the same as most people. But an outdoor wedding, yeah, we had the hay bales set up. I was brought in on like a horse and like buggy thing. We got married under 2 oak trees. The place had a couple different areas, and I'm like, I don't like those areas. Can we go under those oak trees? And she's like, sure. So yeah, the wedding day was interesting because it was like the stormiest day ever. So yeah, we were getting ready at my parents' house, and it was like thunderstorming, like super dark clouds, like it was dark. But we got ready, and as soon as we were ready to take pictures, like at my parents' house, it like the skies cleared, and it was amazing. And he was getting ready at a different location, but then basically on our way to like the actual place where we were getting ready with all the wedding party to take pictures, it stormed. Like it was like scary storming like the whole way there. But we got there and literally the skies cleared. It was sunny. We took our pictures, grabbed something to eat. And then we were going to head to the location where we got married, and literally again, storms again, like downpouring rain, lightning, thunder, like everything on the way to the site. And so the lady called me that owned the place, and she's like, what do you want to do? Plan B, where it's an outdoor wedding. What do you want us to do? And I'm like, well, everyone's going to be there anyway, so we might as well just hold off for a little bit. So we maybe postponed for like 30 minutes, but when it was time to get married, like literally skies cleared and sunny for the whole ceremony. After the ceremony, I think it sprinkled like the rest of the night, but we were inside like the remainder for food and all that stuff. But just crazy, like looking back, like at the pictures and stuff, like, and just to think like literally skies clearing every single time we needed it, it was pretty amazing.
Right. I mean, that's literally God right there. I mean, no one else can
Yeah.
control the weather like that, right? And what stands out to me about that is that at this point in time, you guys still weren't even really living for the Lord yet, right? Like, or developing that
No.
relationship with him, but yet, and obviously you guys had been living together and everything, but yet he's still that good of a father that he wanted that day to be amazing for you guys, weather included. And man, I almost kind of got goosebumps just talking about that, because that's just so cool how God does that. And so you guys get married. What was that first year of marriage like for you? I mean, traditionally, it's always kind of a more difficult year as couples are getting to know each other. But you guys had been living together and doing life together. So what did that first year of marriage bring you guys?
I think it was tricky. I mean, like even right before we got married, I mean, we were living together, but it was a lot of just like figuring out because like our upbringings were so different. And I mean, you're always used to like the way that you did things in your own home, whether it's like cooking, cleaning, putting dishes away, or putting dishes in the dishwasher. Like, there's just so many like dynamics that like you're learning about. So thankfully, we kind of got most of that out of the way
We're still learning
before.
today.
But yeah, I think, aren't we all like kind of still
Yeah.
learning about all of that stuff? But I mean, it definitely was like a learning curve, just to kind of figure out, yeah, kind of still figure out each other and jobs. I mean, there were a lot of changes that happened, you know, around that time with just getting done with school and yeah, getting into like your career stuff and then getting married and first house and all of that stuff was,
I think the biggest challenge for me during that first year was we combined our finances, and how we go about that was tricky. That was, you know, you got so much money in here, I've got so much
Yeah.
money in here. We're still trying to keep track of whose money is what, and it just at one point I don't remember when that was, but it was just okay. It's our money, and we just I don't know.
Amen.
That was
That
the
was-
trickiest part, I think, for me
Yeah.
was the finances.
and when we
Yeah.
first met, like we were broke. Like when I went to visit him in Burnsville, like when we first met, I just remember thinking like seriously, like gas money, like I didn't even know like if I had enough gas money to get back, which is so sad. But I remember we went out, he had fun dogs, we'll just say that, in the fridge, and I'm like, I don't know if I can be with this guy. Like that's disgusting. Like I don't know. Like there's being broke and then there's being like really broke. And
Yeah.
I think that was the only thing in the freezer.
I think it was
Fun
the
Dogs.
only thing. So I wasn't going to eat it. So we went out to dinner and I was just crossing my fingers that he would pay because I'm like, I don't even think I can pay. Like, and that, I don't know, like, again, we'll probably get into this, but like looking back, like in just the amount of years, like since we met, like where we were and where we are, like, holy buckets. Like it's a huge change. So we weren't broke after we got married. Like we started working and like saving money and stuff. But yeah, it was interesting because I don't think either of us knew how to save and spend and use our money wisely.
Yeah. I think that's a common thing for a lot of couples. I mean, a lot of couples that I work with, that's often a source of conflict because, like you said, generally people grow up in two different kinds of households with two different ways of dealing with finances, and that can get tricky. I'm curious for you, Cody, you know, growing up with your dad, seeing him be abusive towards you, and I can't remember if you said he was abusive towards your mom at all, you know, even if just verbally, but now you are a husband, and again, all these years your dad had kind of been the example, like the model for you, right, of this is what a husband does. But you also had enough sense to know that, well, I don't want to be like that, right? And so what was that like for you, becoming a husband for yourself, wanting to do things differently than your dad did?
I think it just came naturally for me, though. When I was given these, chances to be able to be different, it just came natural. I spent so much time as a young kid watching my dad, and I just remember as a little kid, I was curled up in a ball up on my bed and listening to him screaming and yelling, and obviously he was intoxicated, and I just remember sitting there at that time. I don't remember how old I was, but I was young, and thinking to myself that I definitely don't want to grow up and be anything like him. And I wanted to make sure that I give my children a different experience than what I had to grow up with. And so having these opportunities have allowed me to make those changes. And I love it. I love every minute of it, that I'm able to pour more love into my kids and play with them. And I don't know. And like I said, through everything, we still kept so much love for my dad, and I still can't understand why that was. But I don't want to take that risk with my kids either. Like, I want to be able to install love into their hearts and just pour back into them. So
Amen.
it's been rewarding to be able to have that opportunity.
Man, that's so cool. So cool. So then first year of marriage, you're kind of getting life figured out together, combining finances and getting into the careers. What's kind of the next chapter in your guys' story as a couple?
Well, I think it would be that we had bought the house together and experienced all of this, first time stuff. And as our careers kind of had changed and allowed us to make changes, we started talking about having kids. And we bought some acreage on the opposite side of town and we're planning on building a house on it. And I think at this point in time, we had sold our house already with the intentions on building, and we were staying with her parents at the time and found out that we were expecting to have a child. And so our plans of building kind of dissipated a little bit. And ironically, there was a house that was just a couple miles away from where we were wanting to build, and it was a good opportunity to look at like an investment property down the road. So we bought it and stayed there for a couple years. And then realized that side of town probably wasn't the best fit with us and having kids. And so we wanted to unplug from that side of town and go to somewhere else and look for something different. And then while we were still at this house is when we had Madden as well. We had Mason and then Madden, and then we lost Madden. He had passed away, and at that same exact time, we were selling the house and looking to move somewhere else. And the day that we were told that we lost Madden, I remember getting the call that we had an accepting offer on the house. And I just remember talking to the realtor. I'm like, no, I can't deal with any of this right now. And she's like, don't worry about it. I will handle everything. And was amazing to take over, and just she not once bugged us with any of that information, just handled the whole closing process really on her own, and allowed us our space and time to kind of grieve through this. And then I think we ended up
We could probably back up.
yeah
Yeah.
There's
so
a lot in there.
yeah there's a
Yeah.
lot in there.
So let's back up a little bit there, guys. So Mason is your oldest child. First child, what was that like for you? Cody becoming a dad for the first time, Courtney becoming a mom for the first time, bringing life into this world. Let's kind of focus on that a little bit here. Talk to us about what that experience was like for you guys.
Well, we were living with my mom and dad at the time, which we've been super fortunate in between all of our moves to basically move in with them each time before we moved into the next spot, so we didn't have to like rent and things like that. But like he said, we found out that we were expecting while we were living at my mom and dad's house. And like, I am not going to bring a baby home to my mom and dad's house. All of our stuff at that time was in storage. We thankfully sold our St. Joe house, was able to make some money off of it and reinvest into this property. So yeah, I mean, obviously like new for both of us. I grew up in a big family. I've been around babies. My sister by that time already had 3 boys. So I was able to be there for her births, deliveries and stuff, and like be there with her kids and babies. And so it wasn't new to me, like the whole like baby thing. But yeah, I mean, went through most of pregnancy at my parents' house, and then yeah, we bought this other like little rambler house. Lived there. It was super nice. We redid a whole bunch of stuff, but it was our own space to like have our family time. We can kind of talk more about this other part, but his parents, it was at that time that they moved in with us while I was pregnant. So we moved from my parents' house, bought this new house. We had the land, but his parents moved in with us while I was pregnant with Mason. So I always say we didn't really have a chance to like live on our own while we were married. Like, so we got married in 2014, and then Mason was born in 2016. So it was like 2 years, but basically we lived with my parents for a period of time, and then moved into our own home, but had his parents move in with us around that same time too. So it's a lot of change, a lot of like difference, trying to figure things out. Here we are, still newly married, within 2 years, and having a baby and also having his parents move in with us. For me, it was hard. For him,
Yeah.
it was hard too, because it was a huge change. But yeah, pregnancy went well. I ended up randomly having high blood pressure at like 35 weeks, so I had to deliver 5 weeks early, which thank God he was healthy. Never had to go to the NICU. Really only stayed maybe 1 or 2 extra days so he could gain weight, but otherwise, he was healthy. I was healthy. We got to go home, and I remember setting the car seat down, and I think him more so than me, but I don't know. You can kind of
Just sitting in the living room, and I'm sitting there looking at him in the car seat, and I'm sitting in my chair, and I'm just like, at that moment, my life, I could tell the change right there. It's like, well, this is dad mode now, and no more the old Cody. It's got to be dad, father mode. And yeah, it was crazy. That moment, I can remember it like it was yesterday, just sitting there.
Man.
Our whole family was at the hospital, like his parents, my parents, our sisters. I guess that was kind of it, but they were all there. It was really cool. It was a really cool experience, because I just think of like a picture where like, he's holding Mason for the first time, and like his sister was in the room taking pictures for us. My sister was in there. My mom, I don't know that I thought she was going to be in there, but it happened so fast that she stayed in. But we just have the coolest picture like afterwards of him holding Mason for the first time. And our whole family just like around us, like just staring at Mason. So it's just a really cool thing up at the hospital. And yeah.
Wow, what a precious gift that is, to this day, to have those pictures. And yeah, Cody, you said, man, sitting looking at him on the floor and just like, okay, time to kind of grow up and be a dad here. And so you guys become parents, and your parents, Cody, are living with you guys as well. How long after Mason was born did you guys find out that you were expecting another child?
It was Mason was like a year and a half old. Because Madden was born when Mason was like 2.5. We found out we were expecting, again, super excited, planned. Yeah, couldn't be more excited. 2.5 years, that's kind of what we planned, like spacing wise. And Mason, he was kind of a tricky kid, tricky baby. But I think we were at a good point where we were welcoming of another. We were set, kind of figured out Mason enough where we were welcoming of another baby. I at that point had switched to a new job, not too long. I'm trying to think, I was only there for maybe like a year. And then, he was still at the same job as well. With him, like pregnancy went well. Everything was smooth. And basically, like, I guess leading up to that, my brother, there's just a lot of like cool parts to this story. This is where God was like really showing up, but we didn't know it yet. It's kind of sprinkled throughout our story, but like this was kind of where everything started brewing, maybe, if you want to say that. So my brother lives out in Oregon for quite some time. He moved out there not too long after college. And so that weekend, so this was in April, his daughter, her birthday is the same as one of my nephews. So they were in town from Oregon, and we were celebrating their birthdays down at his in-laws down in Albertville. And so we were there. I was 37 weeks along in pregnancy. And we got home that night, and basically my water broke. And I'm like, oh boy, okay, we're having a baby today. So went in, kind of notified the whole family. We went in. At that point, thankfully, his mom was living there because she watched Mason for us while we went to the hospital. Yeah, and it was, again, just a smooth delivery. I mean, he was 3 weeks early, but yeah, so we got there. It was kind of I can't remember if it was kind of a crummy night or something because my sister wanted to be there and she lived about an hour and a half away. So we told her, and it was kind of, I mean, in the afternoon, like 5, 6 o'clock, I think. She didn't end up making it for the birth because it came really fast. But yeah, so it was kind of slow motion. Like we got there and yeah, I got settled in. We got this huge room with like a ton of windows. It was just nice, relaxing. Labor was great. I think he was the one where like our doctor like barely made it because it just happened so fast.
Yeah.
She was on her way but didn't make it. My cousin, she got to be in like she pretty much like almost delivered my baby. Because she worked there at the hospital. So it was cool that she was there. She was present for, I think, Mason's delivery too. So that was cool. I have a couple cousins that work up there. So yeah, I mean, delivered. My sister did make it like maybe 20 minutes after he was born. But yeah, so it was really nice. It was a little bit later at night. By that time, it was like maybe 10. I can't even remember now. Anyways, but yeah, maybe a little bit later at night. But yeah, smooth delivery. No complications for either of us. We got to take him home right away. Yeah, and things were good. I mean, I feel like we went a lot of places and did a lot of things after he was born. Like camping. We went camping a lot. Yeah, and just met a lot of family, hung out.
I was gonna say the amount of family time that we got to spend with Madden, and it was 3.5 months that we got to spend with him, and
Yeah.
we did a lot.
Yeah.
We did a lot with that kid in that short period of time, so
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. Built a lot of memories.
Yeah.
And it was really cool. Like my brother, like I said, he only comes to like Minnesota maybe like twice a year. So he happened to be in town because of his daughter's birthday was their birthdays are like 5 days apart or 4 days apart. But yeah, so he was in town, so he got to meet Madden, and kind of randomly because I wasn't due for another 3 weeks, so he would have never been home. So that was kind of cool. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, things were great. I mean, we welcomed this new baby. He fit in perfectly. He was like the most easygoing kid ever, like night and day from Mason. Yeah, just, I mean, go with the flow. He was just a chill baby. He ate good. All of that was awesome. And then I don't know if you want us to kind of get into like that day. I'll maybe let you kind of share like your portion first, and then if you.
So I was at work and just getting ready to sit down for lunch, and I had been called down to the reception desk to come and take care of there was a couple officers down there. And in my head, when I'm walking down the steps, going down to the reception desk, I'm thinking in my head, like, did I run a traffic light, or, did I do something dumb? And even I made the comment when I saw the cops standing there, and you could just see like the ghost stare face that they had. And I'm walking up to him. I'm like, what did I do? Trying to still be kind of funny about it. And he's like, can we go outside real quick? And at that point in time, I'm starting to think like what happened. And it was a little bit more serious than just a traffic violation. So we step outside, and then they ended up breaking the news to me that we had lost our son. They had mixed it up though and said that it was Mason. And so here I'm thinking it didn't matter at that point which son it was, but we just lost a kid, and I still couldn't get my head wrapped around it that this was true. And so I kind of broke down. We had a moment. I asked them if they had notified Courtney yet, and they had not. And they wouldn't allow me to drive anywhere. I immediately wanted to get to where he was at, and they wouldn't allow us to drive. And so I ended up calling Courtney and telling her. In the meantime, they had an officer on their way to be with her while, they were going to drive you to.
Well, yeah. So I just remember I was working at the clinic at that time, and it was like around like the lunch hour. And normally I didn't have my phone on me, but I just happened to like walk back into the office or something, and he had called. So I was talking to him, and I think you told me to like sit down or something. And then he told me what had happened. And of course, shock completely like set in. I shared an office with 2 other people, but they weren't in there at the time. And so me, like, frantic, like not really like thinking straight, like I grabbed my keys and I'm like, again, like in pure shock. I'm sure everybody there probably could have figured that out, or like something was wrong. But like one of the other people from my office like walked in, and she's like, what's going on, and I don't know if I even told her, but I'm like, I don't know what to do, I gotta go, I need to grab my keys, like. And she's like, hold on, like, what's happening? And I don't know if I said something to her or not, but like I beelined it to the door, like to go downstairs to go out to the parking lot. And by that time there was like 3 other nurses that like grabbed me. And I think I was still on the phone with Cody at the time. I just remember, yeah, in the parking lot, like just again, like pure shock. He's like, don't drive anywhere. They wouldn't let me, like they took my keys, and like I didn't really know like what to do. And he's like, there's a police officer coming to pick you up. And I was just like, I needed to go like now, but like nobody, like the police wasn't there yet. So yeah, I'm just being surrounded by some coworkers, and they wouldn't let me go anywhere. They like basically had to like hold me. And for me, the police finally showed up. And then it was actually the director of the clinic that went with me. But yeah, in the back of a cop car. And I remember them saying, like, we can't put on our sirens and drive, like, mock speeds because this isn't, like, an emergency, but we'll get there as fast as we can. And again, like, both of our jobs were, like Waite Park, St. Cloud, like, kind of more that area. And where our daycare was across town, like, on the southeast side, like, on the other side of St. Cloud State. So it was across town. It felt like 45 minutes to get there in the back of this car. And I just remember like saying like, my baby, just like, I didn't know what else to do.
I remember sitting there in the back of the cop car yelling at the officer to keep driving faster and faster. And he kept telling me the same thing. Like, I can't turn on the lights. This isn't an emergency that I can use the lights. But I remember him like speeding. We were doing 100 miles an hour down Division, but with no lights on. And but yeah, that drive felt like it took an hour to get there.
And for those that aren't familiar with the St. Cloud area, it's, when you're trying to get to one side of the town to the other, that already can take a long time with all the stoplights there. But then you add on just this horrendous situation of just, I need to get to my child, right? And just kind of for you, Cody, the confusion of just like, you're driving 100 miles an hour, but you can't put the lights on. And then for you, Courtney, it's just like, you're saying this isn't an emergency. Like, I lost my child and you don't think this is an emergency. Like, I can't imagine. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine just what that ride was like for you guys and just how long that must have felt.
Yeah, it felt, a really long time. And I guess when I got there, Cody was already there, like in the driveway of the daycare. It was an in-home daycare. And I pulled up and I don't even think I could get out because the police had to let me out. And I'm just like freaking out, like, get me out of here. But yeah, so we met. And I think it was at that time when Cody told me, he's like,
well, I was first on the scene. So when I got there, I ran right into the house. They wouldn't let me go through the front door. We had to go around the backside and into the lower level. And when I got there, I'm walking in and just in complete shock. And here comes Mason running up to me, and he's like all smiley and giggly, and I'm like, I look at the daycare provider and the officer, and I'm like, is this a joke? Like, are you guys kidding with me? And everybody was kind of surprised that what I was saying, and ended up in that time frame finding out that we had lost Madden and not Mason, and that they had told me it was Mason. But like I said, it didn't matter if we which child it was. It was still that deep gouge in my heart now that we had lost a child. And
I think we always say like the pain just shifted.
Yeah.
Because now you had to like figure out, because he told me, he's like, it's Madden, it's not Mason. And then all of a sudden you're just like, what? Like the pain of like starting to think it's the one child, and then the shift of like, no, just kidding, it's the other one. I think my body knew that it wasn't Mason, because I remember like when we were driving, I'm like, how? Like, what could have happened? He's 2.5. Like, what could have possibly happened? But my brain didn't like even think that it could have been the other child, because they said that it was Mason. So when I got there and saw Cody and he's like, it's Madden, it's not Mason, it was just this, like, I don't even know, I can't even describe, but just the shift of pain to now, like, trying to figure out, this whole new thought of it being the other child.
Oh my gosh.
so then at that point, we had all kind of met outside. The cops wanted us to stay outside. We kind of, I don't know, your mom and dad had shown up, and we were sitting out on the lawn, bawling our eyes out. And then finally the cops allowed us to go into the house to
They
see.
weren't going to.
Well, they weren't going to, but
Yeah.
they allowed us to go into the house and see him.
Well,
Why
it
weren't they gonna let you go into the house?
It was-
Tampering with the crime scene.
it was technically like a crime scene, and they had to do an investigation, because when something like this happens at a daycare, they have to make sure that it wasn't intentional and whatever else, all the investigation stuff. But yeah, I remember while I was waiting for the officer, I think they allowed me to, or somebody took my phone and I said, call my mom. And I'm sure she called my dad too, like right at the same time, because I don't remember telling them to call my dad, but they called my mom, and somehow she like met us there. My dad met us there. My sister met us there, to back up for a brief second. So the weekend before, I think this was on a Monday, because that weekend before, like just a few days before, my brother was in town. We planned like this annual cabin trip at my aunt's cabin every single year, and spent the most amazing weekend at the cabin the weekend before. So again, to kind of show, my brother's in town when he was born. And my brother happened to be in town when he passed away as well. So my brother was able to like come there with us too. So our whole family was at the daycare. Like I said, we couldn't go in. So we were just sitting on the front lawn, basically. Cop cars all around. And Mason, I mean, they brought him out so he was able to be with us and stuff too. But I just remember sobbing, just wanting to see him, just wanting to hold him, just wanting to like kiss him like one more time, and not maybe really believing that it was my kid. But the fact that like we couldn't see him was just like, I don't know, it was just really hard. But I think they had to like interview both of us to like before we even went in. So like we went into the cop car individually, and like, what did that morning look like? How was he acting? Like, just to make sure that everything was okay before he went to daycare. And it was. Everything was a normal day. And mind you, he was 3.5 months. Like, he was just this perfect chunky baby, no health issues. Like, just everything was perfect. Like, so this was completely unexpected. But yeah, we both had to do our interview, and again, I don't even know if like I opened my eyes for like hours because we were just like all like huddled up and just crying for, it felt like hours. I truly don't even know how long it was, but finally they said, we'll allow Courtney and Cody to go in. And this one like just hurts because I remember them saying, you have to promise us you will not touch him. And I just remember like we had to walk around like this certain spot. We had to sit on the couch. Like Cody had to like promise to like hold me tight so I wouldn't touch him.
Wow.
And I mean, I was thankful and relieved at the same time because I wanted to see him. I needed to see him. And so yeah, we got in there and there's police officers in there. Like, we went around and sat on the couch and it was him.
That was the hardest moment, to not be able to touch him and hold him and pick him up, and sitting there looking at your child on the floor and not being able to do anything about it.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine, guys.
That was hard.
But basically after that, we got to see him, and eventually like we went back to our house, which is only a few minutes away, and I mean everybody came with us. But it was just like this, I can't even like describe like the feeling of like walking back into the house, and like I think I walked straight into his room and just sat on like the chair and just sobbed. Like I don't even know, like I just couldn't even function. I remember feeling, because it was way past the time to like pump and like feed him. So like I remember just having like that physical pain too of needing to like do that, and just knowing like that was supposed to be for him, but he's never going to be able to be here again. And like Cody said, like our house was for sale in the midst of all of this, and like the next day or something is when like we had people coming in and out of our house to do like showings and things like that. And I mean, it was just,
it's hard remembering all the details that happened, like even the day of and getting there and how it all played out. It's really kind of like I put it in the backside of my brain that I don't want to remember a lot of that. There's certain moments that I do hold on to, and they all end up being like the support that we had. Her family, my family being all kind of spread out, it was kind of hard to get everybody together. And at this point in time, my dad had already passed away. He had passed away the year prior to this. And so I don't know. It was just looking around. I remember walking into our house and sitting on the couch at one point in time and looking. There had to have been 30 people in our house just walking around and, supporting each other. And I started busting out in tears. Just like the amount of love that was in that house was just phenomenal.
there were just always people, which for both of us brought us comfort. Like, I wanted Mason to be at our house. Like, there was a few people that said, do you want us to take Mason? And I'm like, no, like, I need him here. I just don't want to take care of him. Like, somebody else please change his diaper, feed him, but he needs to be at home. And our house was full of people and food, and it was comforting because we could go back to our bedroom and just take some time, but then we could come out and kind of feel distracted for a minute as well. Yeah.
I think that kind of went on for about 2 weeks, where our house was just filled with people. And I remember the day that everybody really had to commit back to going to work and back to their daily lives. And that day will sit with me forever, just because the feeling that I got was like emptiness and lonely and just nobody around anymore.
I just remember like that whole entire week, again, just like sobbing and just saying, I just want to hold him. I just want to hug him. I just want to kiss him. I just, like, that's all I could just keep repeating. And so, of course, that week there was like funeral planning and all of these different decisions that needed to be made. And we were in no shape to be doing that. I didn't know it at the time, but the social worker that I worked with in the same office as me, we both started at the same time, and I said, I need her here. So she came, and this is kind of what brought us back to River of Life. Her and her husband, like, checked out River of Life for a few months, and my dad at the time, he tried calling like his Catholic church that he grew up in. We didn't have an actual church. They didn't get back to us. My coworker, she called River of Life, and Denny, basically, they were in the middle of like doing flooring and remodeling of like the kids area and all this stuff. And he basically was like rerouting everyone's schedule. There was like a car show and stuff that weekend, and he's like, nope, you guys got to be done by a certain time. We have this family that, yep, absolutely, we can do the service here. We went in, I think, like the next day or so to meet with Denny, and it was Adam Haugen, and we walked into the church, and just, I don't know, like, I feel like maybe this peace just kind of came over us that, everything was taken care of. My sister helped with picking things. My coworker helped with a lot of things. Everything just kind of came into place while we were just, I don't even know what we were doing, but we were just trying to survive, I think. But when we left the church that day, both of us looked at each other and we were just like, this just feels right. And I think I've shared this in the past, but I think that's when I received my first verse from one of the pastors. Now I'm going to like forget the actual, it's John something. I'm forgetting it now, but the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness will never distinguish it. And I don't think we realized at that time, like, how important it was for us to be at that church, or what our life would look like after. But
I just remember making phone calls, like, or not me personally, but your family making phone calls to other churches and stuff in the area, and they were all Catholic churches. I want to say it was about 3 or 4 of them that they called, and some of them didn't respond. Some of them said that, no, we can't host it because you don't belong to the church, or whatever reason it was. I just remember it getting shot down. I remember you and your friend talking about like where else we could do it, and she had suggested this church, and I didn't know anything about River of Life, and I'm like, well, I don't really care where we go. I think it's just important that we do something soon.
Yeah.
And so when we met with Denny, walking through the doors, it was Denny and a few other people just greeted us at the door and toured us around and was like, we'll do this, we'll do that, and we'll, you don't worry about anything, we'll handle everything. And it was really cool. And then going around, getting to see the children's wing, and I mean, he gave us a full tour of the whole entire building. And when we were walking out, I remember, like she had said, that we had looked at each other and was just like, this place feels so right. We have to do it here, and who knows what could happen. Yeah. And so we ended up having the church service there, or at the funeral service there, and like Denny promised, they took care of everything. And from hosting us, that I don't even think we did anything really. Everybody just came together and brought it all together, and it was an amazing experience. We had to have been 300 plus people there, and just outstanding. Like that feeling that you get from everybody, that open arms and love, that just like, we'll take care of it. And it was pretty cool. And
even, I was going to say, even before like the service, we went to the funeral home and had to make all of those arrangements and stuff too. And looking back, I know now that this was like, for me, like my turning point. I didn't really know it at the time, but when we got to see him again, he's in this little basket, and I finally got to scoop him up and hold him and kiss him. And I just kept thinking, like, over the past few days, that's all I wanted to do. And when I finally got to do that, it was like this crazy, like, unexplainable peace that just went over me. And my tears were like, no more. I stopped crying. And I remember some, like his sister or somebody else saying, like, is everything okay? Like, why? Like, I'm just like worried that you're like done crying. Like, they were worried about that. And I just remember like thinking, like, I'm okay. Like, it's going to be okay. Like, I got to hold him one more time. I got to kiss him one more time. And once I got to do that, it was like, again, like just this peace that I didn't even know was possible in that specific moment, especially. But looking back, like I said, that was kind of like my turning point where God was with me at that point.
Yeah. It's that peace that
I just
surpasses
didn't know
all
it.
understanding, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason he says it surpasses all understanding. We don't have to understand it, but he still offers it to us anyways. And so it makes sense where maybe in that moment your sister was just like how can you be okay right now? How can you have peace? And you can't explain it other than it's just the grace of God resting over you. And man, on one hand, I'm so like heartbroken and angry that it took you a few days to be able to allowed to hold your baby, but I'm also just so overjoyed that you guys had that opportunity obviously as well. Man, I can't even imagine what you were feeling and going through in that moment. And I mean, just that whole day, right? You know, a funeral, no 3.5-month old should be buried, right? That just should not happen. And I'm just so thankful though that the church just stepped up and did what the church should do, right? And that's to help each other out, and that's to love on each other. And man, I'm so sad that there were other churches that were just like, nope, you're not a member here, so we can't do it.
But I think that was God allowing us, you know, directing us to where we needed to be at. And
Yeah.
I mean, looking at it at that time, and you know, you wouldn't have recognized it. But now that we've got time to clear our head and we've got time to look back and reminisce on that, that's God sending us to where we needed to be at.
Amen.
Absolutely.
Amen. And that helps too. And I don't know if you guys felt this in the moment. You had so much other stuff going on, but just any anger or bitterness, resentment that you might have had towards those churches for being like, basically like rejecting you, like when you can see that God was working through it all and like this was his purpose through it all, is that you guys would be at River of Life. It's a lot easier to let go of any of those maybe ill will feelings that you might have had towards, you know, other priests or churches or whatever in that moment. And man, I just think of Romans 8:28, all things work together for good for those that love Jesus Christ. And that's what he's doing here, right? That's what he has been doing. A absolute tragedy in like the truest sense of the word. And yet through it all, you guys come to faith in Jesus Christ. And so Cody, you said it yourself, like walking out of the church, it just felt like this is where we're supposed to be. And so what did that look like? And also kind of tacking on to that, now that the funeral was over, and Courtney, you said, you know, the tears were kind of over too, but what was that like, you know, just maybe the day after that first few weeks after, just kind of knowing that, okay, like that part of the journey is done. The cold reality of our world is that life still does go on, right? Like how did you guys do that? What did that look like?
Well, again, I think it's
kind
such
of
a blur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thankfully able to take like a whole month off of work, and
So
he
did
did
I.
as well. We went camping a little bit, just to like get away. I don't know, like that healing process. I feel like I don't know if it started yet. I'm not quite sure, but I think too, like, so we had him cremated. So after the funeral, like, we were able to like have him home with us. And I think that brought both of us comfort. Like, he still is home with us. And I think that is a huge piece for me. Like, I feel like he's still here because I have him here. But yeah, we were able to take a month off. I'm trying to think. We moved back in with my parents because we had sold our house that week. We actually, that same week, kind of another crazy story, but we found the house we're living in now from somebody at the funeral who put the bug in our ear. That next week, we actually put in a full offer at the new house, which has been perfect.
It's another blessing.
Another blessing that
Yep.
we, yeah, have gotten. So we lived with my mom and dad for a period of time while we were kind of remodeling, kind of fixing things up at the new house. So that was actually kind of nice because that whole first month we were still surrounded by family, even if it was, we were living there. So his mom actually moved back in with us, actually moved in with my parents and all of us. And then when we found our new house, she moved in with us again. So family just kept following us. So we kind of had that piece. And then, yeah, we started attending church not too long after, like regular services. I remember the spots that we sat in, and during worship, I think that was like my time to just like, thankfully the music's loud enough because that was like my time to just like bawl and just, I don't know, I think that's when like the healing kind of started. Thankfully, we both kind of jumped into this together. Like, there was no looking back. It was like, we need to start going to church here. And that is definitely where I think our healing started, when we started allowing God into our lives, when we started getting into his word, surrounding ourselves with people who knew God's truth because we didn't. So they would pour into us or be a resource for us or check in on us or whatever it would be. But that was the beginning of our new journey.
Man, I just love to hear how God, again, just uses the darkest times of our lives to just shine his light and draw us closer to him. Did you guys, and not everybody has this, but did you guys either individually or collectively have like a single moment where it's just like, I'm giving my life to you, Jesus? Or was it just the whole process of and chain of events that happened that it just kind of naturally happened like that?
I think it was a process that just happened naturally with attending church and being surrounded by like-minded people, or people who could, like I said, pour into us and really help us heal. I mean, we both did do like a water baptism. I think it was maybe a year or so after, but I don't know that there was like, for me, like one day where I'm like, here it is, God. But
Yep.
like, I think it was a process for me.
I think every day that went by, it just felt more and more right that we were at the right place and surrounded with the right people. And for me, that was a big part of my grieving process, is to be, I like people around me. It distracts me. It doesn't let me, concentrate on the negative side of things. And having the right people there at the right time was key. And so it was a kind of a built up, like little bits at a time. And then at one point it was just, well, this is the path that I'm choosing to go in life, and I'm not going back to the old habits or the old ways. And I'm giving my life to Christ, and we were baptized, and never looked back ever since. So this has been the most amazing journey.
What can you guys maybe speak to anything in specific that you feel like, man, through Jesus, like this is how we've gotten healing? Like, I mean, Courtney, you mentioned kind of that verse, but just any aspects of your walk with Christ where you can kind of pinpoint some details as far as like this happened and I felt healing, or that happened and I felt, more of that grief kind of maybe turn into just joy through the Lord? Anything like that stand out to you guys?
I feel like it was the people. We did start, I think I started first, like getting into the groups, small groups at church, and again, just surrounding myself with those people. And they were able to kind of show me, because like when I had questions or when we would ask why, which I feel like it wasn't super often, but it was not really making sense of the situation, but just how God has moved within that situation and kind of moved through that situation to get us where we are. I think it was hard to accept, but I think I probably experienced the acceptance sooner than Cody did, where I just, again, have always had like this peace. And I don't know if it's people praying for us, like maybe that was part of it, or maybe it was just truly God, like throwing his arms around me and just shielding me from anything else. But yeah, I think the people just pouring into us. I remember Denny saying like, there's going to be so much good that comes from this. And at the time I'm like, are you kidding me? He's, really encouraged. He's like, you're going to help so many people by sharing your story. And remember at the time I'm like, I'm not sharing my story. Like, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm not strong enough to do that. But here we are several different times. I've, talked to so many different people and helped so many different people through something similar. And now I am that person, which has been hard. But at the same time, I'm like, hopefully somehow through all of this, I can help other people move through and navigate a tragedy like this.
But before we go there, going back to Madden, did you guys find out what was the cause for his death?
Yeah, so it was like a whole long month of tests that we were waiting on, but basically they found that he had blanching on his nose and chin, which meant that he was face down. He hadn't rolled yet at that time. The daycare provider, said she put him down on his back, and it must have been the very first day that he had rolled because he hadn't yet. And if he just wasn't strong enough to roll back, so it basically was that he had suffocated and just wasn't able to, roll back. And because they did say it was not SIDS. It was not related to that. Because of the blanching, they knew that he was on his tummy.
Okay, man. So yeah, whether it's blanching or SIDS or any other horrific cause that has led to a family losing their child at such a young age, what do you think has been the most helpful advice that maybe people have given to you, or that you've been able to give to people? Like you said, Courtney, as you guys have been helping people, is there anything in particular that you just want people going through these situations to know that may be helpful for them?
The only thing that I can think of that can help is Jesus, getting into the Word. I don't know that we would have been able to do that otherwise. That is the only thing. Finding scripture to give you peace.
The people, you surround yourself with the right people. That's key to keep you moving in that direction as well. So, the way Satan works, he'll pull you away from it is the minute he gets the opportunity. But the more you have people pouring back into you and keeping you on that path was, for me, that was important. That was my biggest struggles, because I kind of wanted to go back to some old habits, and I was mad at God for what he had done. And at this point in time, I'm still trying to learn who God is. And it was just, everything was just kind of all really super confusing, but I still had the right people that kept me on that track and kept me focused on him, and that he was a good God, and that he was forgiving, and that he will bless us 100 times more if we just stay with him. And, so for me, that was my
Yeah.
That was my part, was surrounding with the right people. And I think at that time, those people knew that they needed to be a part of my life. And whether that was God pouring into them and saying, you need to focus on Cody, the right people were in my life. That's why I'm here today, right now.
Amen.
And I think too, like saying your kid's name and talking about them, I think was also healing for us. There's some people who want to avoid it or it's too painful, and some days I can talk about that whole story without crying. And other days I'm more emotional, but I can't control that. But I know some people tried to avoid the conversation or maybe didn't want to connect because they were too nervous, maybe that they would make us cry or bring up something painful. But it was like, I loved it when people would bring in some aspect of Madden. Whether it was like, we refer to him as like our sunshine baby. So like the color yellow or the sun or just anything like bright. Yeah, we have so many family that would reach out, say like, hey, I had a dream about Madden, or whatever it might be, was just comforting that people would say his name.
Yeah. Man, that's such good advice. Such good advice. And so then since then, you guys have gone on to have another child. And I'm curious what that was like, you know, coming off the heels of obviously the tragic experience with Madden, when you guys found out you were pregnant with that next child, when that child hit the 3.5 month mark. Like, did that cause any flashbacks or just traumatic memories for you? What was that whole experience like?
That was really hard for me. I think like when Madden was born, it was one of those things like, as the mom, I feel like I always wanted like a little girl, but at the time I'm like, gosh, like these two little boys are healthy, like they're good, and I kind of feel content. So when he passed away, it was just kind of like, it just really hurts. Like we never planned to just have one baby here on earth, you know? So I think both of us kind of knew that we wanted to plan for another child, but it was a lot of like mental preparation for that, for me at least, to go through another pregnancy, and just the fear and stuff. That there was definitely fear, and I had to reach out many times to people to like help me through that piece of it. But yeah, we chose to have another one, another little baby, and I think it was hard because like we always planned to have like 2.5 years spacing, and now we had Mason, who was 2.5, and then if we chose to have another baby, we already waited a little while too, and I'm like, gosh, I don't know if I can, like I didn't plan to have that large of a gap between the kids, and like, will they get along, and I don't know, just all these like things that would come up. But then, yeah, someone told me like, you can make your family whatever it is. There could be 10 years of spacing and you can make it whatever it is. They can still be close in like as siblings without being close in age. So that kind of brought that fear down a little bit. But yeah, so we chose to have another, and we didn't find out with any of our children the sex of the baby, and so they were all surprises, which was fun. I think I was kind of rooting for a girl just because I'm a normal mom, I think. But yeah, so yeah, we got pregnant and everything was good, and I feel like I had a really good pregnancy. It was right during COVID that like March that we went home. I was like 20 some weeks along. So went home from work. I had started a different job not too long before that. But yeah, so I was working from home like the second half of my pregnancy, which was kind of tough because I didn't have people anymore to like reach out to and surround me like I did at the previous job. So it was good because I could be home and not have to drive and be out and about and be safe and whatnot. But it was hard because I was by myself at home. So I think it was a good opportunity for bad thoughts to kind of sneak in and stuff too. But again, sticking with church, all of that just kind of helped reset a little bit too. But yeah, Monroe was born June 28th on our anniversary.
Cool.
kind of a running joke. Neither of us could remember our wedding date anniversary for like ever. And then that morning I'm like, hey, I know we said we weren't going to get any gifts for each other, but I'm going to have a baby today and that's going to be like our gift. And so, yeah, now we don't have any excuses to not remember our anniversary. But, so yeah, she was born in 2020. I know like you said, thankfully with COVID, it was great for me because she was able to be home with me for 6 months because it was a thing that you could just have your kid home. But I did start to get a lot of anxiety thinking of her going back to daycare, even though she was 6 months. But yeah, the 3.5 month mark was super tough. Again, negative thoughts creeping in, just scared. Yeah. At nights, just being scared that they're going to pass away in the middle of the night. But I remember my sister saying like, I'm with my kid and I do my best all day long. And then I pray that God's going to watch them at night. Like my shift is kind of over and he's going to take over.
Yep.
So that was helpful to hear that. She had a baby before me too. So we have 2 little girls that, yeah, are close together, which is super fun. But
Yeah.
I don't know any anxieties if you had any
Well, I did. Yes.
things leading up to it.
I just remember like every day at night, I'd sit there on my phone watching the camera as she's sleeping just to make sure she's still not rolling over or anything like that. We had her in our bedroom for so long. It was just, I never got a lot of good sleep just, in the younger months of her being alive. And, I remember the first day of bringing her to daycare too that was a hard day for me. That was a really hard dropping her off. And I think you came, we went together and that was an extremely hard day. But again, it wasn't allowing Satan to win. And we had to put our faith in God and trust his plan for us. And we had a really good daycare provider at this time, and she's been phenomenal with the kids. And I trusted her, with everything I had. So we, like I said, there was a lot of moments where the anxiety came and gone as soon as you kind of calmed your thoughts, that this is in God's hands and there's nothing we can do about it, regardless of what the outcome is. And just keeping our faith in God was the most important part through all of this for us. And there was a lot of leaning on, like I said, the support, around us and everybody that was pouring into us. I mean, there was several times that I had made phone calls and talked to them and met up with coffee and whatever the case was. It was always, like I said, God always put those right people in our paths when we needed them. So
yeah, the word that keeps coming to mind or that keeps coming up as we talk is family. The role that your guys' families have both played throughout your lives and the roles that you've played with them as well. But then now having a church family, right? And just having the body of Christ surround you and support you and be there for you. Man, we all need that. As believers, we all need the church. And it's not the building, it's just the people, right? And I'm so glad that, last season I had Luke and Amy Wilson on, and Amy talked a lot about finding your tribe. And it sounds like you guys have found your tribe.
Absolutely.
well, certainly.
And guys, man, I'm just blown away again at what God has done through you. And I mean, even just the past couple of years, right? Since Madden's unfortunate passing, like his goodness has been so evident and obvious in your life. And I know this is kind of a big question and a broad question, but it'll be my final question for you. As you guys look back at the goodness of God throughout these last few years, as you've been building that relationship with him, what comes to mind? Does anything stand out specifically about his goodness to you?
I feel like just in like the darkest of times, like what he can do in such a terrible situation and turn it for good. Never would I have imagined we'd be where we are today with what we've gone through. Whether it's like our relationship with God, whether it's our relationship with family, each other. I'm pretty sure, a lot of families get torn apart because of something like this. So just the good that has come from it, which is sometimes still sounds crazy to me to say, like, there's so much good that came from losing our child. Sounds insane even just to say that out loud, but man, there's so much good. There's been so much good in our family.
Yeah, and the blessings keep falling into place for us, and being obedient and trusting God's plan for us is important. So, and again, like I said, surround yourself with the right people. That's been hugely impacted in my life for me. So
Yeah. Well, man, you guys have an incredible testimony, and I have no doubt that God is just going to continue to open up doors for you guys to share your story. I'm praying that this will reach just the exact people that need to hear it, that are maybe walking through something similar as you are, and hearing what God has done in your life will give them hope and will give them encouragement and help them see that, yeah, as weird as it sounds, that good can still come out of such a horrific situation. And man, this has been such an honor and a joy to just chat with you guys here and to get to know you. And you guys aren't too far from my wife and I. You're probably about 10 minutes away from us. So we'll have to get together more often going forward and continue to build this friendship. But guys, thank you so much for coming on and being willing to just be vulnerable and real, and just being willing to give God the glory for what he's done through the darkest times of your life. This has been awesome.
Amen. Thank you for having us.
thanks, Terry.